Good morning, church. It is a real privilege for me to bring the Word of God this morning. I would like to begin by thanking Pastor Peter David and the leadership of the church for this opportunity for me to preach. I'm so grateful. I do not take it for granted. I'm also grateful for technology that we can still connect this way. We find ourselves in lockdown, but the gospel is not in lockdown. It will continue to spread despite the limitations that have been put in place due to COVID-19. Such is the power of the gospel that has been entrusted to us. In fact, I remember the Apostle Paul writing and saying the gospel is not in chains. My name is Murio. I am from Zimbabwe. I serve with a missionary organization called Youth with a Mission, YWAM. YWAM is a movement that is dedicated to preaching the gospel through training, mercy ministries, and evangelism. Now, I've been with YWAM now for 22 years. The word that God put on my heart to bring to us comes out of Numbers chapter 13 and 14. Now, when the Israelites had come to the verge of entering the promised land, Moses sent out 12 spies, one from each tribe, to go and spy out the land of Canaan. He gave them specific instructions to go and check out the land, whether the cities were fortified or not, whether the people were strong or weak, and they were to give a report to him. So after 40 days, they came back, and of the 12, only 2 of them had a positive report. The rest brought back a negative report that then affected the whole congregation. Their confidence was gone. They completely lost their confidence in themselves and their confidence in God. And this is what they said. They said, "We are not able to go up against these people, for they are stronger than we." Now, they completely forgot that they had actually won some battles along the way before they came to this point. They completely lost that. They said the land devours its people. They said the people we saw are of great height. And they also said we seemed to ourselves like grasshoppers, and so we seemed to them. The whole congregation wept all night, and they wanted to choose a new leader and go back to Egypt. They wanted to go back to what was normal to them, what they had been used to, what they were accustomed to, even though they had been slaves for a very long time, and God was redeeming them out of slavery. But at this very moment, they were choosing slavery. They were choosing to go back to what was familiar. Let me just read a few verses out of Numbers chapter 14. Numbers 14 verse 1 says, "Then all the congregation raised a loud cry, and the people wept that night. And all the people of Israel grumbled against Moses and Aaron. The whole congregation said to them, 'Would that we had died in the land of Egypt, or would that we had died in the wilderness? Why is the Lord bringing us into this land to fall by the sword? Our wives and our little ones will become a prey. Would it not be better for us to go back to Egypt?' And they say to one another, 'Let us choose a leader and go back to Egypt.' Then Moses and Aaron fell on their faces before all the assembly of the congregation of the people of Israel. And Joshua the son of Nun and Caleb the son of Jephunneh, who were among those who had spied out the land, tore their clothes and said to all the congregation of the people of Israel, 'The land which we passed through to spy it out is an exceedingly good land. If the Lord delights in us, he will bring us into this land and give it to us, a land that flows with milk and honey. Only do not rebel against the Lord, and do not fear the people of the land, for they are bread for us. Their protection is removed from them, and the Lord is with us. Do not fear them. Now, what Caleb and Joshua are bringing here is what the congregation had forgotten. So in their moment of desperation, they lost sight of God's faithfulness and his ability to fulfill his word. Now, to cut a long story here, everybody who was 20 years and above died in the wilderness. They did not make it to the promised land. And as I reflected on this story, I thought about our very own lives, particularly in the last few months. A lot has happened. Our lives has been disrupted. What we have known and lived as normal is no longer normal. We find ourselves having to navigate through different difficult challenges. So, I would like to ask you two questions in light of the passage that we have been looking at. The presence of giants in the land that they went to spy in, the land of Canaan, caused the Israelites to lose faith, first in God and then in themselves. They lost perspective about who they were. They lost their confidence as God's people. Now, the first question I want to ask us is, what are the present circumstances revealing about us? What are the present circumstances revealing about you? See, because these difficult circumstances have got a way of revealing what we really think about ourselves. If somebody might come to you in a time of ease, in a time of comfort, and ask you, who are you? You might give them the right answer. You might give them what you might have read in the Bible, or what you might have heard in a sermon or in a teaching. But many times it's different when somebody comes to you in a difficult time and asks you, who do you think you are? Who are you? Our responses tend to be different, because in those moments we lose perspective of who we really are, and what we really think about ourselves comes to the fore. And unfortunately, many times it's not a confident understanding of who we are. So in these difficult times, we may find ourselves thinking, well, I'm not good enough, or I cannot achieve my goals, or even thinking others are better than ourselves. Others are better than me. The Israelites doubted God's ability to fulfill his promises to them. The second question I want to ask you is, what are the present circumstances revealing about your God? Again, these difficult circumstances have a way of revealing what we really think about God. And many times we've got ready theological answers. If people ask us, what do you think about God? But in the moments when the rabbi hits the road, when challenges come, when difficulties come, and we are asked the same question, our responses are often different. We might find ourselves thinking at this time, he doesn't love me. I don't think he fully understands what I'm going through. He has probably forgotten what he promised me. Or even thinking that God responds to other people's prayers faster than he does ours. Or we might even be thinking, God has shown his power to me before, but not this time. I don't think this he can do. I think this is way too bigger than God. If we're listening, we probably might hear biblical David saying to us, I have been in danger countless times, and yet I looked to God. I trusted him. I turned to him, and he answered my prayers. Many times when I read about the battles that David fought as he was on the run from Saul, every time David remembered who he was, but he also remembered whose he was. And he turned to God and he asked God questions. He asked God for guidance, for direction. Shall I pursue them? How do you want me to do this? And God was faithful all the time to give David a response and a strategy that would guarantee good results and a victory for him. David knew this from a very, very young age. Even as a shepherd boy, he learned to turn to God. He learned to trust God. If we're listening, we probably might hear biblical Esther saying, my life too was in danger. At one time, I faced the possibility of being killed and my people being completely annihilated because they were Jews. We probably might hear Esther saying, I sought the support and the help of others. I asked others to fast with me as I turned to God and as we turned to God. And God heard our petition and he granted us victory. That even some people who were not Jews sought to become Jews because our God had come through for us. So I want to just encourage us to listen to these stories. These were ordinary people like us, ordinary people like you and me. And yet they never forgot who they were. They never forgot that they belong to God. You and I are sons and daughters of God. And there's nothing that can change that. And we should not allow anything to change that. But we should always remember this in times of ease and in times of difficulty, that we belong to a God who does not forget us, who does not forsake us, but most importantly, a God who is able to deliver us from what we find ourselves in. So, if you're going to run, do not run away from God, but run towards him. As we see from a number of examples in the Word of God, of people who found themselves in difficult circumstances, and yet they ran to God. I remember the words of Job, saying, I have heard of you by the hearing of the ear, but now my eye sees you. This is after Job had suffered, and he had even accused God. But he came to understand the power of God, the sovereignty of God, and the ability of God to comfort him. So I hope this is an encouragement to you. God bless you.